to cancel culture, hookup culture, or victim culture?
Well, neither could we. We created this platform for those other girls. Girls like us who want to give a different perspective from a Christian and conservative worldview.
We talk about life, work, relationships, pop culture, and everything in between. So let's be those other girls that just don't talk about culture,
but change culture.
Hi everyone, welcome. You're listening to Those Other Girls with Mallory and Friends. I'm Mallory, me, you, we are changing culture, and we're bringing back traditional values. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a mid-afternoon tea. I've done these a couple of times just for the Patreon. I've done them a couple of times for there was just like a bunch of other topics that we just had to talk about. And that's why we're doing it this week. As you guys, if you listen to Saturday's episode, well, first I want to say, let me say that first. Okay. So if you listen to last Saturday's episode, we were saying how there wasn't that much to happen. Well, that's because when we recorded, there wasn't that much to happen, but there's two stories that I want to talk about that I feel like will be kind of irrelevant. One of them absolutely will be irrelevant by next Saturday. So if you're watching this, you are seeing this on Tuesday on the Patreon, and you could be seeing this Tuesday on the Patreon. And if you're just a regular listener and you have not decided to come and join the Patreon for as low as $5 a month, you'll be seeing this on Wednesday. With that being said, you should join the Patreon. Let me tell you why. You get exclusive content. We have done some exclusive content with someone who is a femme doctor. That is on there. Also, all of Freeman's free-for-alls are on there. And the latest one, which was about IVF, very, 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 very good episode. That is exclusively a Patreon show. You also get early access to things such as this mid-afternoon tea. And if you were on the Patreon, you heard about our 3-year anniversary party. And when we're going to have some new merch this fall coming up. So in the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear about it first on the Patreon. And more than anything, you're really going to be helping with the podcast. It does take a lot of time, energy, money to do the podcast and some of the other podcasts on our network. We're having 2 more by the end of the year. 2 more people hopefully will be joining on, not necessarily for Those Other Girls, but for the Other Girls Media Network, which we are growing, which is the goal is to have good, cute entertainment for us other girls. So a podcast about true crime where you also don't have to hear when the person's a Christian about how all Christians are awful and evil. You guys know which podcast. If you listen to true crime, you know what 3 or 4 podcasts I'm talking about. Every time they mention a Christian, like, well, yeah, that's because Christians are, and it's like, okay, I don't want to hear that. Anywho, podcasts like that, and then the movie podcast. I review movies, TV shows, and books, and I've only done 10 so far. It's just super laid back. Like, it's not anything that I'm trying to like super promote. If you like to hear me talk like this, if you're like, oh, this is kind of entertaining, you're just rambling, then you'll love it. If you want someone super structured that'll show clips and that can break down certain moments, then that's probably not for you. Even though I have been getting better being a critic, because I think I've mentioned this before on that podcast. I write, so I have to learn about different writing techniques and everything, and like different, Chekhov's gun, things like that. So I am a little bit of a critic, but definitely not like a Man of the Jedi. I love a Man of the Jedi. Not like her, or even, why am I blanking? Alex Myers. Alex Myers, so funny. A Man of the Jedi is good. Because she is funny, and I feel like she just knows a lot, and she's like really in, so she gets to see movies way before we do, and she knows all this background. So like, for example, I believe it was her review of the movie Old. She was able to talk about some of the differences between the movie Old and then the script or the original script, and how things were different. I'm not in it, so I can't give you that type of stuff, but I can give you a fun retelling of it that you will be able to get the gist of it, and it might actually make you want to see it if you haven't already seen it. Anyway, that I've talked entirely too long about that podcast, but you should join the Patreon. We also have merch. We have these mugs, so you can get a mug to drink your tea out. To drink your tea out of for whenever we do these types of things and whenever you want tea. We have mugs. We have emotional support water bottles. I don't have that with me at this moment. Also really cute merch when it comes to anti-abortion shirts to let everyone know that you're anti-abortion, or if you need something to wear to a march or something like that, or to your school for an event. We have some great merch in that regard. I'm trying to think of anything else, any other announcements. Let me look at, I did create a docket for this because I needed to. Okay. Merch. Oh, how did I forget? So it's going to be 3 years, August 24th, of Those Are the Girls. For those that do not know, I started Those Are the Girls with another girl. Bada bing, bada boom. She could no longer do it. But we started out one way, one direction, and we're kind of still going in that direction. But a lot of things have changed since then. I'm very proud of Those Are the Girls. This is something fun that I do. Whenever I get feedback from you guys, it just makes me feel so like, it makes me feel so like this is purposeful. You know, this podcast has been going for 3 years. We've been building this community, and it is different when, you know, we don't have thousands of dollars of people backing us. We don't have the type of networks, you know, Turning Point, Students for Life, Live Action, LI. None of those people have like donated, given us any help at all, if I'm being honest. They have not. So it's 100% like grassroots. And I was going to say it's 100% me. Financially, it kind of has been. Shout out to the Patreon and those who shop from the merch. But I can't say that it's 100% me because I have been blessed with a lot of people who have helped along the way with graphics. Freeman, who is on now, and she helps with editing. And also, you guys, some people send me articles. Some people, hey, I was listening and this kind of sounded off. Oh, I think you were supposed to edit it. You know, like, it's kind of been a grassroots, and that's really what I wanted it to be. I don't necessarily want it to be just a Mallory. That's why it's not called Those Other Mallorys. That sounds funny. It says Mallory because that's me and friends. So like everyone friends. Like it's not just me. That's what's called Mallory. It could be Those Are the Girls with Mallory, or Mallory's Other Girls or something like that. But that's not what I want it to be. So it's changed and grown, and I'm just very grateful for all that it's had and all the different opportunities that I've had because of it. So we're celebrating August 24th, and if you're living in Charlotte, we're going to be meeting at Merchant and Trade. It is on our social media, and we're going to be there right at 5. I'm going to have a cute little cake, and maybe a little bit of something else. So if you are considering coming, please let me know. We're going to be there right at 5 so we can get right in and get a cute seat. It's Merchant and Trade in Charlotte. I'm just looking. I posted about it. I'm pretty sure. Oh, maybe I didn't. Okay, I need to do that. But we are meeting, and I'm really excited, and I can't wait to see you guys. This stuff is it's fun for me. It is truly like what Those Are the Girls has truly been a huge blessing for me, and it's given me a huge purpose, which if you have not already, you should check out. I believe it'll be, by the time this is out, it will be on the blog. An article I'm writing about purpose and career and what was I made for? You guys know that song. Wink, wink. So yeah. Last thing. No, I shall talk about it later. Okay. So, actually, last thing I want to get into. Listening back to last Saturday's episode, I feel like I came off a little bit like bitter, and that really isn't necessarily my heart, but I do think that's what happens after a while. And I guess it's just like a cautionary tale. Ladies, don't become bitter. Don't, it's just a cautionary tale. I just wanted to say, I guess acknowledge that I probably sounded very bitter, and I wouldn't necessarily say that I am bitter, but it's just a cautionary tale when you're out here, when you're trying, or even when you stop trying to not become bitter. Being single is a beautiful and so wonderful thing. The Bible Paul actually mentions how it's better to be single. So it's not a bad thing as long as, and we talked about this, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 episodes, as long as you're using your singleness usefully, as long as you're being selfless within your singleness. It's the people that are being selfish. And being married is an amazing thing. That is something that God has also ordained to create families, and that's wonderful. That's beautiful. Being married is a great thing as well. All right, here we go. First story. Actually, being married is a great thing. That can lead us to another story, to another first story. Here we go. And this one is brought to you by Variety. Okay, so let me give some background. We posted about this a couple of days ago on the Instagram about how so many celebrities are now saying that, like, they love being a mom. They've always wanted to be a mom. They love being a wife. Being a wife is the greatest thing on earth. Things like that, which is good things. Like, this is good. It's good to hear celebrities, whether we agree with them or not. Someone said, oh, you might. So the person we're going to talk about is Sweeney. Someone said, oh, you might not have should have used Sweeney because she's practically a porn star. And while I don't disagree with that, I want to say 2 things. Number one, she has mentioned how she kind of regrets it and how she's uncomfortable doing those scenes and how she wants to stop. Something along those lines. Evie Magazine talked about it. And we talked about it on the podcast as well. And number 2, we were just mentioning that she said this. And as we do the story, because we're going to be talking about her too, we're going to be talking about that. It's just mentioning that. It's not co-signing what she does. I mentioned I tried to watch Euphoria, could not do it. I saw the first episode and maybe like 15, maybe half the episode of the second episode, couldn't do it. I tried, everybody's talking about it. No, it's too inappropriate, too much. So, I can't defend her on that, but I can see, I like that she is talking positively about marriage and about being a mother, because you just really don't see that a lot. When you have these celebrities going up there and saying, if it wasn't for my abortion, I wouldn't have this award. I think it's refreshing to see someone say what we're going to say she said. So I'll talk about this first. So there's 2 parts that she talked about. Okay. This is from Variety. So I'm going to link this like we always do, but you're not going to, this is like later in the article. I'm not reading it because there's only 2 sections I want to talk about. It says, to achieve a career as long as Moore's, Sweeney would want to, quote, to find a really healthy balance. Quote, I've always thought I'd have a kid by now. I always wanted to be a young mom. I love acting. I love business. I love producing. I love all of that. But what's the point if I'm not getting to share it with a family? A smile, end quote. A smile breaks through and Sweeney's voice turns whimsical. Quote, the time will come and I'll have 4 kids and they'll come with me everywhere and be my best friends. End quote. I think that's, yes, okay. That's the last part of the first section I want to talk about. So lovely. I think that, it's so different than, I want to say, most celebrities. Like, you don't hear them talking about being a young mom. You don't hear them excited about that. So I think that's so different. That's not what you really expect from a celebrity. So yeah, she's cute. She's a cutie. And I'm praying that, God will open her eyes to some things that she's participating in, and praying that she will, repent for some of the things that she's done, which we all need to do. We all need to repent. Yeah, so that's really cool that she's saying that. And I think the fact that she also says they're her best friends, I think in a world where people are talking so negatively about children, that lady on TikTok, I've had to block some accounts, like on TikTok, who has that list of all the things that happen when you get pregnant. I can't. It's so scary. I mean, some of those things, I think about this all the time. You want to be prepared, but how much is too prepared? I think knowing that you could rip is enough for me. I don't need to know, like, I don't even want to share some of the stuff on that list that I sometimes see. Like, it's scary stuff. I personally would not want to be, like, I personally would not, I would rather not know. That's just me. I know some people, maybe that'll be in the comments. Do you want to know everything that could happen to your body that is negative while you're pregnant? Or would you rather just, know a couple basic things and go in and hope for the best? Because that's me. I don't want to know. Yeah, like, that question they always ask, if you could find out when you would die, would you want to know? No, I wouldn't, actually. I wouldn't. Or how you would die. I would want to know when I was going to die, because, I got things to do. But I would not want to know how I was going to die. Okay, so that's one thing. So this is a little interesting part. Okay, if you guys remember, Politics talked about this a couple, maybe like 2 or 3 days before this was recorded. So I want to give them, their credit. If you remember, maybe a year ago, a little over a year ago, Sweeney got in trouble because she took pictures at her mom's birthday party. And some of the people in the party were wearing MAGA hats. MAGA. MAGA. Okay? Make America Great Again. She references that. Let's hear what she has to say. The upside of fame as a family member is that it provides opportunities. Quote, most of my family have never even been on a plane before. End quote. Now she brings her cousins to set to, quote, help them grow and open their minds. And that is what I love doing now. End quote. First of all, that's so sweet. She seems like a really nice girl. The downside is that family can too easily become the story. Sweeney, unprompted, brings up her father wasn't at the birthday party, an event she threw for her mom's 60th in 2022 that drew social media opprobrium, upsetness. Photos of the celebration showed guests in what appeared to be Blue Lives Matter garb and MAGA-styled red caps, later revealed to say, make 60 great again. Quote, there were so many misinterpretations. The people in the pictures weren't even my family. The people who brought the things that people were upset about were actually my mom's friends from LA who have kids who are walking outside in the Pride Parade, and they thought it would be funny to wear because they were coming to Idaho, end quote. We're speaking on the Sunday of New York City's Pride March, which was blocked traffic. On her way to the interview, she asked an assistant over the phone if she could get out of the car and walk, only to be reminded that, well, she's Sydney Sweeney. Quote, people are so fast to build someone up, and then they love tearing them down. And it's so fascinating to see. 3 years ago, I was going to college just like everybody else, and all of a sudden, I'm not human anymore. So, a couple of things. I think make 60 great. So, make 60 great again. Okay, sure. That's silly, a little corny, but sure. Make 60. Even though I will say people who are super anti-Trump. So there's different levels. It's a spectrum, like they say about other things. It's a spectrum. People who are super anti-Trump would never wear anything that's a red hat with any type of MAGA reference. I mean, I've seen on Twitter people are like, don't do it. Like, it triggers people. That's what I've seen on Twitter. So people have said, is Twitter real life? No. But once again, that's a spectrum. So that's interesting. Now, the Blue Lives Matter thing, that is even more interesting to me because she confirms Blue Lives Matter. Make America, or make 60 great again. Okay, whatever. You can chalk that up to, but the Blue Lives Matter thing, that's very interesting. I don't necessarily care either way. Like, her parents can be supportive, her family can be supportive of Trump or not. I doubt she is. I mean, she could be. I don't know. Don't really care either way, but I find that interesting. I find that interesting that she brought that up, because if it were me, I would try to draw as much attention away from either of those. And saying that they're in the Pride Parade, that doesn't necessarily mean as much. There are plenty of people who are gay and consider themselves MAGA. As a matter of fact, there's tons of people. There's a whole brand of MAGA people who are gay. So adding that didn't make a lot of sense, but it is what it is. And we have to remember, MAGA doesn't equal Republican, MAGA doesn't equal conservative, and MAGA doesn't equal Christian. MAGA just means Trump. MAGA equals Trump. It doesn't equal Republican, it doesn't equal conservative, and it doesn't equal Christian. So I just think that's interesting. Interesting that she brought it up unprompted. It's probably been like bothering her, because I mean, people were angry, which also brings me another point. I think we really hold these celebrities to way too high of a standard for anything. Like, I really don't want to be one of those people that, like, if a celebrity, I mean, obviously there's big things, but stuff like that, I'm trying to think of something that would, like, really, what would be the opposite of that I, like, care that much about. I just can't really think of anything that's specific that I care that much about, that I would just get so up in arms with, because at the end of the day, like, it doesn't really matter that much. I think that sometimes we get so caught up in, like, we gotta have the celebrity do this and that it just kind of gets a little like, ugh. So, like, I don't care whether she does. I think it's an interesting story, and I just think it's interesting that she brought it up, and I think it's interesting that she didn't address the Blue Lives Matter thing. What do you guys think? You think that's interesting? I think it's interesting. Last thing, so these are two stories that, like I said, like, I feel like we should definitely cover in this mid-afternoon tea. Okay, this is from Rolling Stone. Ne-Yo walks back, apology, doubles down on controversial gender identity comments. The singer has revoked his initial apology while also issuing something of a non-apology. I will never be okay with allowing a child to make a decision that is detrimental to their life. Sorry, that was quoted by Ne-Yo. Over the weekend, Ne-Yo appeared in an interview with Gloria Veliz for Vlad TV, in which they criticized parents for allowing their children to have a say in their own gender identity from a young age. Shortly after, the musician issued a statement. So this is the statement that he issued. Quote, after much reflection, I'd like to express my deepest apologies to anyone that I may have hurt with my comments on parenting and gender identity, end quote. Now, after a little more reflection, Ne-Yo has decided to walk back his apology. Quote, this SHIT is getting out of hand. And I will not be bullied into apologizing for having an opinion, end quote. The singer shared a video recorded in his car in which he stated that he wanted his stance to be made clear. Quote, from the horse's mouth and not the publicist's computer. Okay, Ne-Yo, end quote. Over the duration of the 2-minute-long upload, he attempted to justify his opinion on the matter by saying that he is currently raising 5 sons and 2 daughters. Quote, I was asked a question and I answered the D-word question. I have no beef whatsoever with the LBGTQ. He said, that's what threw me off. He says LBGTQIA plus community whatsoever. Do what you want to do with your kids. However, someone asked my opinion on this matter, and this is how I feel. I will never be okay with allowing a child to make decisions that is detrimental to their life, end quote. That, I think, was a great way to handle it. I think, so this is why this story is interesting to me. This is why the story is, like, relevant, in my opinion. The transing kids issue is what we'll call it. That is becoming something that people are talking about around their table. Before, this was something that, like, I know I personally didn't think twice about trans kids or anything like that. That's just never crossed my mind. Honestly, I never thought about trans people either. Just not something that ever crossed my mind. Now it is something that comes up outside of, like, the politics things that I do. It can come up in any type of conversation. This is a conversation that people are having all the time. Similar to how abortion is becoming very popular of a conversation. What I think is relevant is this is something that is so, this is a very, very sensitive topic, because this affects someone's identity. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the issue of abortion doesn't affect how someone views themselves. So it's not so rooted in who they are, and you having an opinion in it can be hard and difficult for people, but people don't feel as if you're attacking literally them. Now, are there people who do kind of feel like if you believe in abortion, you literally want me dead? Sure. There's people who are like that. But the majority of people don't feel as if it's a literal attack against them. With the trans issue, that is part of the problem, or part of why it's such a tricky, difficult thing to talk about. And I am just curious why it came up in this random Vlad TV interview. Like, is he a politician? But once again, like I said, it's something that's coming up in conversations. And the idea of kids should not be controversial, or not transing kids should not be controversial. As we say with sex and any other surgery, kids cannot consent. And I'll say, there's kids who get nose jobs at 16. I think that's inappropriate too. I don't think they should do that either. I don't think you should be getting no job at all, but that's a whole nother conversation. But, because that's another argument. People say, well, people get it. Okay, don't give those kids their surgeries either. That's fine by me. Like, you're not hurting my feelings. So it's interesting that came up during that conversation. What I liked about Neo is that, I like that he said how he felt, and I do agree with I do agree with him. I think that it's kind of crazy for you to allow your kids to dictate that. I think, and once again, it just goes back to having this moral thing, like having a set concrete. This is, and I know it's hard because, like, morality is within these parameters. I don't think things should be like, so, for example, if your son wants to do ballet, I don't think you should stop him. I mean, if your son wants to do theater, he could be the talk of the town, like SpongeBob there. Apparently, SpongeBob everybody had crushes on him. So, and he's straight. So, like, that doesn't make you gay or doesn't make you anything. It just means that you're doing theater. So, our morality is within these perimeters. And I think we have to remember it that way. So, anything outside the perimeter, and it's hard because, once again, like, people want to leave the perimeters. You should have the freedom to leave the perimeters. And you do, except for morality. So, like I said, if your kid wants to do ballet, theater, kind of, your son wants to do the kind of like feminine things, that's fine. There's nothing like wrong with that. That's what they want to do. They're leaving these stereotypical perimeters, but they're not leaving the morality perimeters. And I think once something starts to go out of the morality perimeters, that is defined by the Bible. This is a Christian podcast, so FYI on that. I'm a Christian, so that's why I'm speaking from this worldview. So once they want to go out of the perimeters, you have to, as a parent, it's your job to help guide them to go back within the perimeters. Once they're an adult, you can't keep guiding them. You can keep giving advice, but like when they're children, you guide them back to this perimeter. And, from a non-Christian perspective, it just doesn't make sense that your child, like young children especially, like that just doesn't make sense. Like the jazz person, how at 3 or 4, like kids just want to do things. If your kid wants to dance, act, do, all this other stuff, then like, sure, encourage that, have them flourish in that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that their whole gender is changing. I mean, we hear stories from detransitioners all the time about sterilization, not getting their voice back, losing their breasts, all this stuff at such a young age. And there is a difference between body dysmorphia, which many trans people have, and then just kind of not liking your body, not feeling comfortable, and I don't necessarily say wanting attention, but really wanting to be loved and cared about. There's that aspect too. And I think that if your child, you have to figure out which one your child falls under and then hit that head on. I think that if your child truly does have gender dysphoria, there should, I don't know necessarily the steps. Like, I'm not the person to go to. There's podcasts out there. Tons of people have talked about it. But in my head, what I think you should do is get them the therapy. And you should be listening to those podcasts. You should be reading those books that talk about it. And if your child is just like really uncomfortable in their body, I think it's your job to help them become more comfortable. And I can only talk from a woman's perspective, and I've talked about how much I love being a woman, but I've told you guys about that TikTok where the girl said that she her therapist asked her or made a comment like, do you think that you were trans or you want to go by he him because you felt powerless doing your sexual assault and you think that being a man would have made you feel more powerful? And she was like, I never thought of that. My therapist ate when she said, you know how the Gen Z talk. And then all these comments, oh, I wonder that too. Wow, this would make sense for me. Oh, I feel this. And it's like, oh my goodness, these parents are sitting here feeding into this when really they need to be talking to their child about this topic. I don't know how to talk to a child who has been sexually assaulted. I don't know how to talk to a child in that regard, but like within this resource, that's what you hit head on. You shouldn't give them something for body dysmorphia because that's not their issue. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. And I think that the more we talk about, the more we kind of talk about how kind of ridiculous this is, that you would think that your 4-year-old can dictate their gender, that you think that your 16-year-old ends up having like 6 other friends who all are having, body dysmorphia, gender dysphoria. I think I've been saying body dysmorphia. I'm being gender dysphoria. Well, I would say it's probably all connected. So it's a weird coincidence that your child goes to school and all 6 of her female friends have gender dysphoria. Like, we should be talking about this. We should make it seem, it's good that we're kind of agreeing that something's wrong with this. This isn't right. This isn't normal. This isn't good. And I love when someone says something right and they double down. And obviously it's right in my opinion. So I like when they double down. And I also like that he said his publicist told him to say that, because that's another interesting part about this. So the publicist is telling him, because once again, this gender issue attacks someone's identity. So it's so much worse. I feel as if it's so much worse in society to discuss it. I'll say, I guess I can share this. I was asked to be on that transgender Jubilee episode. They reached out to me because they could not find a lot of people. And I've been asked to be on a couple Jubilee episodes. And it just hasn't worked out yet. And so I'm on like the list of everything. And I was asked to be on that episode. And when I was thinking about it, it didn't work out because of timing, location, everything. And they don't pay you. At least they didn't the times that I've almost been on. So yes, taking off work would have been difficult. But anyway, so when I was going over, like I was discussing it kind of with friends about whether I should be on the episode. And I said, in all honesty, because it was conservative women versus trans women. So men who are biological men who have transitioned. When I was thinking about it and talking about it with a friend, I said it would be difficult to look someone in their face and say you have a mental disorder, because once again, it goes to their identity. And I don't know the person's full story. Like there's just so many other things. So it is such a sensitive, difficult topic. Why they're talking about it on some random little, like, he's probably promoting music or something, don't understand. But I like that it is becoming a conversation that people can have. Yeah. It's such an identity thing. And, so interesting that we're talking about this, or that I'm recording this, because I was listening to a church today and they were actually talking about identity. And it was talking about how as Christians, our identity is in Christ. And like, what exactly does that mean? That means that like he's the final judge of what we say, what we do, and that everything we do should reflect Christ. Are we perfect? No. So that's a tall glass to fill. We need Jesus to be able to do something like that. But I just think this all goes back to identity. Like, if you can find your identity in Christ, a lot of these other things in the world are not going to matter as much. A lot of other things like And, you know, because I truly believe like a huge number of it is just young girls feeling uncomfortable being women because we have made womanhood seem so evil and awful. Our big, awful periods, which I don't want to discount those who have terrible periods, but it is something that's great. It's your fifth vital sign. And if you are having a terrible period, you should be able to go speak to someone about that because it can be fixed. But, you know, we made it seem so awful. And, you know, yeah, women, we have it terrible. Men are raping and pillaging all over. I mean, you can't leave the house without someone raping and pillaging you. And yes, these are real realities that some people do face, and that does happen. But like I just feel as if it's not as bad as sometimes we think it is. Is a lot of things hard? Sure. Are there times where we are really facing issues as women because we are women? Sure. I would argue that there is truth in that. But I think that we just have to do a better job. For example, like what I liked about Gloria's speech is she talked about the cognitive dissonance of Gloria from the Barbie movie. Like, I like that she mentioned those things because that's the truth. And a critique I guess I would have is like, okay, so how do we, like, what can we do to change that? And then how do we move forward in a positive way? And I think part of just is, yeah, we get our periods. Yeah, it hurts. It sucks sometimes, but eventually we're going to be bringing souls into the universe. There are people who, I don't know where humans are before like where their soul is before, but their soul is going to enter in your body, and it could not happen without you. You know, like, these are some good, positive things to think about. You know, like, imagine how, like, great our bodies are. I believe it was Mary Kate when she was on a podcast. She made a good point. She said all of women's like organs, like all the like interesting parts about us are like covered, are inside, and all the men's are just outside, you know, hanging and everything. How cool is that? Like, we're a mystery. We're special. I mean, come on, we're special. So I think things like that, talking about that in that regard. So yeah, anyway, love when a person doubles down. Interesting that his publicist told him to talk about it. Interesting. So these are just some quick mid-afternoon, midweek tea. If you enjoyed this, you should listen to the regular podcast. On Saturdays, we have a weekly tea caps. Tuesdays, when we do interviews, are our interviews. And if you enjoyed this, make sure you like, rate, review, subscribe. However, wherever you're listening, thank you guys so much. Let me know in the comments. Do you want to know do you want to know all the like negative, awful things that could happen to you when you're pregnant? Or do you kind of want to know a couple of things and then just be surprised if something worse happens? And then, so that'll be the poll. And then I guess the question could be like, I don't know, maybe I'll have something to do with Neo. I can't even think of what Neo. Sorry, now that I'm thinking about it. It was popular in the 90s and 2000s maybe. Before I was able to listen to secular music. And then when I was able to listen to secular music, if my friends from Christian school weren't listening to it, then I probably wasn't because I didn't even know to find it. So anyway, you guys have a great night, day, evening, however, wherever you're listening. Bye.